Hello everyone, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're dialing in from. My name is Adam Beck. I'm Executive Director at the Smart Cities Council, and I'd like to welcome you to our August Data Dialogue as part of Smart Cities Week ANZ 2020. And today we're going to be talking about digital twins and cities. I'd like to firstly start by acknowledging our session sponsor, Aviva, who are not only a corporate partner of the council, but also a sponsor of a number of our sessions as part of Smart Cities Week. I'd also like to say hello to those that are going to be listening into this as a podcast in the not too distant future, and also those watchers who will be downloading this from our YouTube channel in a couple of days. A couple of notes from me before we get into the dialogue and the Q&A. I'd like to encourage everyone to make use of the chat box. Today's topic is interesting. It's kind of not new. It is a little bit new. Feel free to share comments and questions if you'd like to direct a question to any particular one of our panelists. Please make sure you mention for whoever the panelist is, and I can make sure that I direct our questions to them. I'd encourage you to ask questions along the way. I will be dipping in and out of the question box, so don't be shy in coming forward with making comments or asking questions, because I can use that as part of our dialogue. As I mentioned, we're recording this session and it'll be up available on our YouTube channel at Smart Cities Week Australia New Zealand within about 24 hours, if you'd like to go back and share that with a friend or go back to it for future reference. As I mentioned, this Data Dialogue is, I think, around the 4th or 5th that we've had since Smart Cities Week ANZ 2020 kicked off. Smart Cities Week is typically our annual in-person gathering of the Smart Cities community, which unfortunately has not been able to take place this year because of obvious reasons. So we decided to spread Smart Cities Week out over 8 months. And each month we've been having a data dialogue. We've also got a whole range of other online engagement sessions that you can check out on the program if you head to the Smart Cities Week ANZ 2020 website, which is scwaustralia.com. The data dialogues each month are being brought to you by the Centre for Data Leadership. That is our initiative at the Smart Cities Council that focuses wholly on data leadership, and part of data leadership is the act of activating data and doing something with data. And so at the Centre for Data Leadership, we like this idea of data activation. We've been running sessions that focus in on a whole range of different data activation platforms and approaches. We've talked about data trusts. We've done a reflection of open data. We've had a session around data exchanges. And today we're going to talk about digital twins. Digital twin is, in our view, a very powerful data activation platform, and we'll hear more about that, of course, throughout the session. So you can head to our website for the Centre for Data Leadership, where we've got some great resources, in particular our Data Leadership Vitals, which cover the 5 key areas of data purpose, data security, privacy, ethics, and also governance. So we've got some tools and resources there that may assist you. When it comes to digital twin, the Digital Twin Hub is the go-to place for everything digital twins within the region here in Australia and New Zealand. Digitaltwinhub.org will get you there. There's a whole range of not only resources, but also news articles. And we also have a forum for our community. You can register to be part of the forum up in the top right-hand side of the website. You can also subscribe to the Digital Twin news updates that we do. About every 10 days, we're circulating information or opportunities around everything digital twin within Australia and New Zealand. One of the things you'll find on the hub is the digital twin guidance note. So for those that are just starting out on their digital twin journey or want to read a little bit more about what digital twin is, what it isn't, core functions, capability, minimum data sets, and also within this document we have a little bit of an overview about what sort of the future marketplace needs are to sort of make sure that we have thriving marketplace. So we've got some ideas and recommendations that we're pursuing in there around policy, governance, standards in particular, and on the hub you'll find more information about that, including this guidance note. The other thing you'll find, we've just updated the hub this morning to put some information in there around Digital Twin Week. It's sort of like a week within a week, isn't it? Digital Twin Week will be running 19th to the 23rd of October. It's a celebration, a week-long celebration, engagement, knowledge exchange, peer learning on everything digital twins. We've got some early activities and events that are listed there. But the other thing you'll find if you head to the Digital Twin Hub and click on Digital Twin Week is that you will find a registration form there if you would like to be part of the week-long celebration, whether you have an event, an announcement, a launch, or whatever it might be, and you want to be part of the Digital Twin Week program. Encourage you to go to that form. The link is on the Digital Twin Week page within the hub. So let's get cracking and get into today's dialogue. For those that have joined us for previous data dialogues as part of Smart Cities Week, they're exactly what it says on the label. It's a dialogue. This is not scripted Q&A. We do use audience questions throughout to help us guide a little bit of our discussion. I've got a bit of a storyboard of themes and topics that I want to cover with our panel. And you can see on the screen there, our guests today are very diverse from different sectors, government, non-government, and also private sector. Unfortunately, Michelle hasn't been able to join us today. We had some technical issues with her coming in from San Diego, but nonetheless, we still have a stellar lineup. So we've got Melissa Harris from State Government in Dept in Victoria. Thank you for joining us, Melissa. Sean Audain, heading over to New Zealand, who's City Innovation Lead at Wellington City Council, doing some great work, and we'll hear more about that. Dr. Graeme Kernich from FrontierSI, doing some ongoing incredible work, research, capacity building, and also in innovation development around all things spatial and digital twins and other great supporting infrastructure around digital twins. Joanna Kraatz, who's the Future Innovation Officer out in Wollondilly Shire Council. Joanna represents the sort of the group of 8 councils out there as part of the Western Sydney City Deal. And of course, as we know, or some of you know, the New South Wales government has deployed a spatially enabled digital twin for the state. So we'll see what Joanna's thoughts might be around digital twin at a city or local council level. And as I mentioned, unfortunately, Michelle hasn't been able to join us today. So, friends, thank you so much for coming online today. I'm going to take us back. Well, not take us back. I'm going to start with what, for some of us, may be some sort of old school tasks or capacities that we used to have back in the day. I'm a tragic urban planner from way back. I did get familiar with tools like GIS in the day, and I think for some of you on the line, you know, that sort of starting point of digital twin coming from a spatial or an urban planning perspective is sort of quite common. Mel, I'd like to start with you if that's okay. Not only are you with the Victorian State Government, you're also in some way wearing another hat with ANZLIC, so very deep in the land information spatial sector. Can you share with us the journey that you've gone on at the department when it comes to digital twin, spatially enabled digital twin, and what you feel you've been able to sort of achieve over the last couple of years in this sort of emerging agenda?
No problems, Adam. I thought you were going to ask me to reflect on the town planning tools I used when I first started my career.
Go back to university. Yeah.
And to be honest, you know, sadly they haven't changed that much, I'd have to say, in a lot of cases, which I think is actually the opportunity here the digital twins really present so profoundly. Look, for us in Victoria, obviously I'm in the land administration department in the Victorian government. So among all the things that I'm responsible for, it's the statewide foundation data sets. And of course, these data sets, which are known in Victoria as VicMap, have been going for decades. And we've been watching with interest over the last couple of years the way the technology has evolved to the point where 3D, 4D and digital twin type platforms are now becoming a major sort of strategic point of focus for us in thinking how we evolve our data sets into the future. So one of the significant decisions we made a couple of years back was to invest $45 million in digitising the state's map base for Victoria, which is basically the data repository of all property information in Victoria, and taking that from being an analogue, stitched together sort of patchwork of analogue documents to being a spatially precise, data-driven, very important data set that will underpin so much digital innovation into the future. So the Digital Cadastre project, it's a long-term one. It's a bit like, I tell people at times it's incredibly technical and complex, but it's a bit like stumping the house. It takes a while for the, the fruits of all the effort to be revealed. So what we started to do last year was really start to innovate with exploring what sort of opportunities that investment would unlock. And it's a pleasure to meet you, Joanna, because one of the inspirations for our digital twin work has been the Western Sydney digital twin that I became aware of through Bruce Thompson, through ANZLIC. And look, we rapidly sort of moved towards our own digital twin project to try and understand how we needed to invest in the foundation data sets and support the Victorian sort of spatial and broader community to really, I suppose, harness the benefits of 3D capability and machine learning and big data. So that's what we've been doing. It's been a fabulous experience. It's gone from one thing to another. I think over the past 12 months, we've seen a huge uplift in digital twin type work, in the use of 3D data. We're seeing great innovation in Victoria, and we think this is really exciting for the future in terms of not just sort of the productivity and efficiency benefits we think this kind of capability can unlock, but also the benefits in terms of collaboration, better community engagement, better decision making, and just better use of public data.
Mel, thanks for that. And we're going to, of course, circle back to you a little bit later, and we'll talk about Fisherman's Bend and other bits and pieces. Sean, I'm going to come to you next. Sort of a similar question. I mean, I remember being over in the in I don't know which office it was about 2 years ago, putting on the VR goggles of sort of your digital twin visualization of the city. What's the journey been? What's the last 2 years looked like, and how did the digital twin idea unfold?
Well, to be honest, we kind of stumbled into digital twin. We had all these bits that came together, and suddenly we realized we had most of one. At the moment, the challenge for us is we've started to realize just how important the temporal nature of data is to a sustainable digital twin. And what you're seeing now is, as we redraft the city's digital plans and investment strategies, you're seeing an organizational twin colliding with, which is creating a really interesting dynamic, and it's starting to make us examine how our organization relates to other organizations, but also how does it. And what's different now is a digital twin has moved to front and center of that conversation, as opposed to previously being a bit of a curiosity that just a few of us played around with.
Sean, your urban planning background, the city's sort of position and capability on GIS. What role did sort of that spatial awareness of the city and the spatial data that you'd had, how much of that was in place versus sort of what have you had to sort of build as you've gone on your twin journey?
We're very fortunate to have an early advantage with three-dimensional data. Wellington is a truly awful place to try and build a city. It's so hilly and so earthquake prone that you need to be able to constantly measure things in 3 dimensions to keep the place running. The silver lining of that, though, was it gave us a real head start in understanding how powerful 3-dimensional data was. It also made us understand things like cartography and the real power of particularly 3D and 4D information is how we naturally see the world. And so if you can project the future into 3D and 4D information, that means that you can take away a layer of abstraction. And every time you have abstraction in a process, it gets a little bit harder for people to translate and understand. And as for the urban planning part of it, Wellington's very fortunate, and well, from my point of view, we've always had a measurement tragic working for the city. A long legacy to build on, and hopefully I've infected enough of the younger generation that they'll carry on after me.
Okay. Joanna, let's go to you. What I'm doing here at the moment is sort of doing a quick round of the panel, from those sort of spatial roots. And what we're going to do is we're going to build this conversation like a digital twin sort of out of the ground. So Joanna, where is Wollondilly at in its sort of grounding of information, data, GIS? What have you had to sort of start with, before the state level digital twin came into play? Where was Wollondilly at with its sort of core spatial data?
Well, when I joined council, it was very much a land information system, and very much around processing DAs and planning certificates. We've been on a journey about recognizing spatial data, coming to know, bringing the organization to have knowledge about GIS, and then really pushing to tie assets to place. So that was the journey we were on, and then we have worked really closely with what is now Spatial Services because we needed to get that function going, we needed outside data. We weren't able to create that ourselves. And that's how we got started with the geocoded addressing and all of the different layers to build those data points together.
Yeah. Okay, and we'll come back as well to talk more on Western Sydney. Graeme, let's turn to you to sort of round out this sort of spatially grounded part of the conversation. You're no stranger to sort of spatial innovation. You've seen a lot in recent times, and going back also in your role at the CRC for sort of spatial innovation. How would you describe? I was going to use the word industry. I'd like to use the word marketplace, actually, supply and demand. How have you seen policymakers advance and embrace innovation? And equally, how have you seen sort of the supply side, the innovators, the vendors sort of step up as well to make sure, that the skills, the ability to sort of, deploy and continually innovate to help government. What's sort of your summary wrap there on how the marketplace has advanced over the sort of the last 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think if you think about it in terms of capability, I think it's rapidly evolving. You're certainly seeing, if I just take the second part of your question first, whether it be consultants or vendors, they're certainly trying to add capability to their teams that bring in elements of the digital twin that most people have consensus or have readily identified as being sort of gaps. So just to name one, pick one, you're certainly seeing organisations think about how they interact with standards a lot more, or get involved in the process of standards development, because it's clearly they clearly recognise that the digital twin evolution and ecosystem is not going to be dominated by one player or sets of players. It's going to certainly grow at least in the near term, and so to contribute to that, you need to round out your capabilities. And so we're seeing a lot more. I think industries looking at ways in which they can either partner or build in-house capability that starts to address some of the gaps that have been identified in the digital twin journey. So definitely starting to see that amongst the industry side. In terms of the marketplace, your first question, I guess I would say what's recognised or what's changed over the last 5 years is that people have seen that the environment they immediately operate in and can only go so far, and to partner and to look at ways of learning from each other through either case studies or proofs of concepts is the way to advance their organisation. So they're recognising that partnering, whether it be government or industry or the university sector, is that sort of light bulb's gone off. That to really advance this beyond their borders of their world, it's going to need partnership. So I'd say that's been a bit of a change.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that, Sean. We've got a comment here that your audio is sort of cutting out here and there, so I'm going to come to you now to respond to a question, so we can just test that, but at the same time get you to answer a question. So I'll let you know what we hear or don't hear. Can I pick up on Graeme's last point there around partnerships? And we know that Wellington's broader smart cities journey has been one that's built on some pretty deep collaboration with the private sector. Can you share any sort of particular partnership opportunities that you've been able to exploit in building out your digital twin, and what you sort of learned from those?
Right. So we've had a few generations of partnerships. We had an initial quite deep and wide one with NEC. We've got some new ones coming that are in operation with Unreal Engine and some companies in Auckland. And what we have found is that by modulating our twin aspects, we can create manageable partnerships with where we can deliver fairly clear outcomes to the city, allow that productization to take place, but also create an environment where we can engage and disengage over time without losing our intellectual investment. Key to digital twins. It's one of the things that seems to set them apart from other forms of technological investment.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Sean. The audio was going really well there for the majority of that conversation. We got a little bit of glitching at the end, so I'm not sure if you're on Wi-Fi or what's happening there, but we'll monitor that, and I'll let you know if we need to sort of get you to reboot. Mel, same question coming to you now, and partnerships, collaboration. This is also going to lead us to sort of your twin work at Fisherman's Bend. So let's sort of jump straight in and focus on your work in Victoria. You've partnered with academia. You've been building out a pilot. Hopefully those that are in Australia that nerd out on digital twins are somewhat familiar with the Fisherman's Bend work, but what I'd like to get you to focus in on is how that partnership, Mel, has helped you, on your twin journey and help build capability. Talk to us a little bit about that on the back of Fisherman's Bend, and I'd like you to sort of then end the comment with sort of where you're at now, at what sort of point in that journey you think, and the journey's still yet to be defined because this marketplace and this agenda is still quite new for the built environment, but where you feel you're at with your twin journey. So if I can get you to start with collaboration, building out Fisherman's Bend, where are you at in your journey at the moment?
Okay, yeah. I mean, as I alluded to previously, I would say the partnership and people side of the Fisherman's Bend Digital Twin project has been one of the most pleasing benefits. So I think going into it, we recognised that this was pretty bleeding edge, that no single person or organisation had all of the things that we needed to pull off the project, and that really we needed to draw on the best available, not just sort of capability, but also tools and data sets into the project. So we were very open. We took a very sort of open-palmed approach initially to the composition of the working group, which did start out just being the core project partners, so being the two councils, so that the Fisherman's Bend precinct is shared between two councils, the City of Melbourne and Port Phillip. We had the University of Melbourne, the Office for Projects, various bits of Dept, and that was about it to begin with. And then as we got into it, it was just like, oh, wouldn't it be good if we could do whatever, if we could add the sewer piping or some transport information, or, you know, we had this data set or that data set. So we just reached out wider and wider to the stakeholders that we thankfully have very good pre-existing relationships with, and everybody was just so happy to come in, contribute their time, their talent and their data and capability to the project. And that's just been fantastic in so many ways. I mean, in terms of how you extrapolate those learnings into the future, I mean, doing digital twins on a city scale is a big job. Some of these data sets are incredibly expensive, and in my view, the key to pulling it off is going to be how we develop a data sharing ecosystem, avoid duplication of effort, and really try and leapfrog on some of the innovation and capability that we've got. So I think a couple of really big benefits was just getting more than one use out of data sets that already exist. There's just a treasure trove of data out there, but it's locked up, siloed. So, you know, unlocking it, freeing it up and getting more than one use out of it has been fantastic. And on the bin side, you know, there's amazing work happening in Victoria at the moment through the Big Build. We're seeing incredible uptake in 3D and digital building methods. But, you know, I think initially it's probably fair to say they were very focused on the needs of the project. So at the moment, we're really enjoying saying to people, well, this is great for the project, but think about the whole of life use of this data set. Yeah, because I think at one point we were sort of in a place where once the project finished, it sort of got put in the proverbial top desk drawer and it was never seen again. And then I remember thinking, I can imagine at some point in the not too distant future, I'm going to be paying someone a lot of money to back capture that, you know, that information. So just trying to sort of break open people's awareness, and there's been absolutely no resistance. Everybody gets it, and there's huge momentum and energy in doing this work. So we're using the learnings in all sorts of ways. We're using it to inform new digital twin projects. We're using it to think in sort of early terms about how we develop a digital twin strategy for Victoria. We're using it to inform our investment decisions around modernising our foundation data sets, and we're collaborating more and more. So we have a 3D working group which meets every 6 weeks. We had the most recent meeting last Friday. I think the invite list is to about 80 people now. We had 50 attend on a Friday. And it's just incredible. It's a very low pressure environment, very collaborative, very friendly and supportive. And every single time, just by virtue of creating a forum where people can come and contribute the great work they're doing and share their information, their experiences, everybody rises together and learns from that forum. So I think even the capability and engagement side of things doesn't have to be complex. It's really just about having an open mind and, you know, I suppose recognising that we're, you know, achieving these outcomes at scale in the future is going to involve everybody being on board a common plan and vision.
Mel, it's hard not for sorry, I'm going to come back with a follow-up question. It's not hard for your enthusiasm and excitement to sort of very quickly rub off on others, including myself. But I want to come at you point blank for a moment, and it builds off a question here that's come through a good question here. Mel, how are you measuring benefit and value? So, and Stephen's asked that question, and I'm going to roll that up into sort of the mega question I want to ask, which is, with all of your collaborators, with the ecosystem, the meeting, the experimenting, the investing, my question is it making a difference in your decision making and therefore use and investment of taxpayers' money? How do you approach that question?
Well, that's a tricky one. I'd have to say, over the past 12 months, the Fisherman's Bend Digital Twin project was very much an agile discovery project. It's an R&D type thing. There was very low expectations. We just wanted to get into it and really explore the capability. So from, I suppose when you look at it from that perspective, you know, definition of success looked like growing our skills and capability in terms of curating new data sets. I suppose, you know, creating that collaborative forum where people could work together was another big criteria out of it. We made significant progress on things that are important to us from the land administration perspective in terms of taking BIM files from some of the new developments and converting them to 3D cadastral files, which is quite complex work, but is really an important part of our sort of, you know, land registry functions into the future for multi-storey buildings. So, you know, what we wanted to do was grow our capability in 3D in a whole range of forms, and I think to the extent that they were success criteria, they were successful. The other thing we wanted to do was, you know, yes, it was an R&D sort of a sand pit or a big sort of digital experiment, but we wanted it to the extent that it would be useful and provide useful insights to decision makers, we wanted to apply the best capability we could provide to support Fisherman's Bend, because it's very much a city shaping precinct in Melbourne. By the time it's developed over the next 30 years or so, it's going to be twice the size of the Melbourne CBD. So it's really going to make or break our livability. And we really wanted to make sure that the decision makers in that precinct had access to the best available capability and data to support them in their work. So, so look, I think from that perspective, we use a lot of the learnings to develop a investment strategy for our BigMap data sets, which has been incredibly useful. And we're about to appoint a digital twin team for the first time. So we are wanting to keep going on this journey. Yeah, I think we're very encouraged by some of the benefits we've seen. And look, you know, the productivity and efficiency side of things is not too hard to dimension. You know, for every day we can pull out of decision-making processes that are regulatory in nature, and particularly in the planning and development process, there's millions of dollars a day in savings that are really on offer here if we can start to unlock these efficiencies and get them right.
Thanks, Mel. Joanna, let's head to Western Sydney, kind of ground zero for a whole lot of stuff happening in Australia, investment, infrastructure, horizontal, vertical, social infrastructure. You are part of sort of the club of 8 councils that sort of cover that area. You also have the leadership of the New South Wales government with a spatially enabled digital twin deployed. You are a local authority. You kind of have access to a digital twin. Where are you at with lighting up the twin, activating the twin? I'm trying to understand the interface and the intersection point between Wollondilly Shire Council and New South Wales State Government spatially enabled digital twin. Lot of good words and marketing on websites and the city deal. What kind of is happening there day to day on the ground?
So the way it works is we're a user of all that rich data that existed through the state, and New South Wales had done so much work on reusing their data. So the digital twin really gives a portal and a way to bring people to it. Now there were existing portals, but they didn't give you that interface where you could see it and easily necessarily interact with it. So for Wollondilly, our task now is we contribute data and we have to operationalize that visual ability within the digital twin. And that is our change management process that we've got to work through task by task to bring that to the front line. And the benefit of doing it within the group of 8 is we're not doing it individually. We all are working on the data governance of how we share data and so we've got some hurdles to get over, but we're getting over them as a group of 8. And so it helps, you get a broader idea base, you get, when there's concerns, there's more places to workshop it and to work through it, and then to have access to both the state and federal resources through the city deal just really brings the council operation to a much higher level than we would have had without being able to feed into that. Wollondilly, with a population of 53,000, would have found it really difficult to invest in 3D data. But by being able to contribute when we get data from sensors and to be able to contribute to the proposed cadastre process as we get applications, everyone benefits from, one, having the local eyes on that data and improving the quality, because you pick up things that you're working with in your local area, and then also being able to look at things from a regional point of view.
Yeah, okay. Joanna, is there a digital twin strategy in place somewhere out there in Western Sydney, whether it's yours, you've got one for all 8, it's driven by the state? What if I was to sort of walk into the office and say, can I have a look at your plan for your journey and your maturity? Yeah. What do you point to?
The state very clearly has their plan. The existing digital twin was a proof of concept, and now it's expanding, and so they have that plan. The group of 8 councils really will develop their digital twin feed-in strategy through what's called the Digital Action Plan, which is one of the city deal commitments of how we all work together digitally, raise digital literacy within government and outside, and how we work together. So it doesn't stand on its own, but it's in that process, and that is the Digital Action Plan now has an implementation working group, and that's where that's taking shape.
Yeah, okay. Sean, as the other city local government representative with us, you mentioned in your sort of opening statements that you kind of fell into digital twin. Is your plan to continue to just fall in and evolve, or you've gone back and back engineered a very clear journey? What's, if I roll up to the front desk today in Wellington, asked to see the digital twin plan, what's sort of the response there? What have you got, or what are you thinking? What's your approach?
So if you could wait a couple of weeks, that would be a good start. Pandemic-y thing. But so what's got us where we are now is by extracting a digital dividend from our strategic projects. So things like our resilience program, things like our reform of the consenting system, our new district plan, they're all delivering components of a digital twin. What is different and what's happening at present is we're taking that approach and regularizing it, essentially. So what that looks like is a new digital strategy for the city. It's part of the economic strategy. It's got digital twin as one of the 3 pillars, alongside digital inclusion and digital democracy society. We're still having an argument about which one we'll go for, probably both. But what that is things like taking the rules as code approach that's being experimented with in the district plan, and then applying that across all of council's regulatory silos. You've got partnerships, so things like Let's Get Wellington Moving, which has 3 large public sector partners in it, experimenting with different aspects, particularly around standards implementation. And then you've got the city companies, things like the water company, Wellington Water, looking at what the digital asset system looks like and how all of these things interact with each other. So the city's job is to do the one thing that only the city can do, which is to bring all of these things together in one place and be that sort of permanent glue that helps everyone else collaborate.
Yeah, okay. Graeme, you're kind of my neutral territory here. What is your view here on maturity and this idea of, you know, of the marketplace maturing, you know, government, private sector? You know, I've sort of, you know, thrown the question, you know, to our government friends around, you know, have you got a plan? Have you got a strategy? There's been comments around pilots and trialing and then scaling. What is your view around the idea of digital twin maturity? And I say that because I hear very good cases sort of for and against. I hear the case of it's black and white. It's this is a twin. Anything else isn't a twin. Versus, well, you know, BIM's, you know, I've got a digital model, that's a twin, right? But it's just a low level of maturity. I haven't got to the visualization part. Do you have views on this sort of evolution and maturity concept at all?
Look, I do. I don't have a definitive view. I think there's a couple of elements to what you said. I'd say this: the digital. There's going to be an evolution from where we are today and where we're going to be in 20 years, and what the sort of future states are going to look like. You know, I think are up for sort of grabs. I'd say where we are at the moment and in digital twin. And when you say the word digital twin, you know, there's a lot of definitions. A lot of people think about it in a different way. I was in a conversation yesterday in a similar forum to this, and the conversation was entirely around components and objects. So, you know, we were talking about satellites specifically. So the digital twin discussion was all about that, not at all about where we are today, which is a discussion really around the built and natural environment. And what I would say is federating a number of asset-based digital twins to look at a precinct or say state or federal level. Where I think we are today is we're really looking at building models to look at just understanding how to build a model. So learning through to looking at models to do some future scenario planning, perhaps look at testing different ways in which the environment acts. That's going to mature through to advanced predictive analytics when you start to bring in different sorts of data and fuse that together. Sean mentioned temporal analysis. I think that's going to be really important in the future. And we'll start to see digital models move to, I'll say, learning. So where the data that's developed in the digital world comes back and influences the physical world. So, you know, that's going to be in real time. So I think we're going to see a maturity through that sort of set of levels as we go forward. When we reach that, whether we'll reach it in all instances, that's up for discussion. What I will say, just alluding back to the conversation I had yesterday in the space industry in particular, was that the digital, a lot of the conversations we're having about federated models in the built environment as a subset of the digital change agenda that's occurring across large organisations and government at the moment is a very common language. So this is a set of discussions that is also happening inside the US defence as they think about how they better build digital twins into reducing costs, building out better supply chains, and this is anything from modelling a process through to modelling their logistics. So I think we're seeing in all sectors a conversation about the digital change and how the concept of digital twin, whether it be 3D or 4D, matures going forward.
Okay.
That'd be my view.
Yeah, thanks, Graeme. Okay, a quick rapid round of yes, no, black and white responses. Okay, I've got a couple of questions to fire at you all. The first one is, so just put your local authority hat on for a moment. We're talking digital twins and cities, local government. Sort of citywide twin versus component part twin. How does the local authority build its sort of agenda up from the ground? Is there an optimum? So citywide, do you just jump in and build a citywide twin and go for it, or do you? It sounds like a number of you are sort of, a part here, a part there. Mel, Fisherman's Bend is a part of a city, right? Part of an area. Or do you go the New South Wales approach? Twin for everyone. Happy days. If you're a local authority and you had, no constraints, budget, time-wise, you had the political coverage, what do you go for? What do you think the optimum would be? You set up a program of building component parts up, or do you just rip the Band-Aid off, build a twin for the entire city? Maybe, Sean, I'm going to go to you first. Rapid response.
You build a twin for a purpose. So you deliver on one strategic outcome, then you start widening it out. It's a little bit like colouring in. So you can build a low definition twin for your entire city and then start making it higher and higher definition. That's how I would do it.
Okay, Mel?
I think it's about the sum of the parts. I think there's a lot of data inputs into a good digital twin platform, but making those work takes a lot of effort in terms of standardisation and thinking about the particular use case. But the magic with spatial is that it gives great context and relativity to the individual parts and enables those place-based insights, which is, I think, where the magic is. So, yeah.
Yep, okay. Joanna?
I think you need a certain scale of land coverage, and then you've got to get the extra layers to fit your purpose. And so then for us, you've got to look at where that value comes from, and it's likely asset life cycle. So if you're building things, that's where we're trying to focus.
Okay, and Graeme?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if it depends on who you are, and we're defining that as local government. I think I agree with what Joanna just said. You said that you define purpose against your defined area and build out from there.
Okay. Second quick question: what is the Achilles heel of the digital twin for local government? Joanna?
What we're experiencing at the moment is having enough resources to service frontline while changing the way you use tools. And for us, that's our immediate difficulty, which we'll find a way to address.
Yeah, okay. Graeme, what do you think the Achilles heel is for local government on the twin?
Oh, I think it's definitely resources and competing priorities. If you're in one council, it might be how do you build a bushfire response in Australia versus if you're in a non-bushfire zone. It's about how you deal with all the congestion and construction pressures that are occurring at the same time. I just think it's getting airtime.
Yeah, okay. Mel?
Yeah, well, I'd say the change management piece. I think there's a huge spectrum of capability in local government. So you've got high capability in some organisations and all the way down to the other end of the spectrum in some. So getting a base level of capability is quite challenging. And then, yeah, there's the resources issue. So obviously a lot of these tools and data sets can be expensive, but even when you stump up for the initial cost, maintaining it can be an Achilles heel.
Okay. And Sean?
Digital consciousness. Many people who work in local authorities aren't even aware of their digital footprint, which is what plugs into the problems with maintenance and the problems with getting the investment to begin with, in my experience.
Yeah, okay. Last one, and I'm going to go to some great questions that are coming up in the question box here. If I am not kind of data literate, if I don't have a good information management system, if I don't value data, digital twin is kind of a non-starter, yes?
No.
No, yes, it's a non-starter?
No, it's not a non-starter because one of the use cases I think we're going to see in Western Sydney is just helping people understand all of the development that's going on. And it's really hard without something like a digital twin to understand how a planning proposal relates to the airport or where the economic development can come from. And so I think that's the place where the community was going to get the most immediate benefit, is understanding how all of these, all of the development that's happening in Western Sydney relates to one another.
Okay. Who else wants to sort of agree or disagree with me on that one?
I'll have a go. I definitely think it's a non-starter. Well, look, what we're finding that 3D and digital twin does is it takes a very difficult conversation around why data is important to a whole new audience. So it really cuts through, people can engage with it. And, you know, a lot of people, not everybody has high technical literacy. So when you can touch and feel and relate to the data sets in such a rich, interactive way, I think it really elevates the discussion, and I think it really helps build a really strong case for investment. And look, and I think that's even more so given what we've been going through this year. We've all been going through this, you know, unprecedented level of digital transformation in adjusting to our new normal. And so I think even just, you know, the appetite for the conversations has increased. So I think those two things together, I think, bode well for the future.
Yeah, okay. Graeme or Sean, did you have any views on that at all?
I think I would just simply say that, as Joanna said, digital twins give you a way to interact. So you can take the data out of the equation and just talk about the scenarios and the possibilities. So when you talk to the community, you can actually just, you don't have to talk about, you don't have to have the data conversation. You can just look at what the outputs are. When it comes back to building it, though, obviously people like us, we would simply say that if you don't have the good enough data, you know, garbage in, garbage out, really. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think it depends on where you are in that chain.
And I think it depends on when you ask the question. There was a time when it was very optional for organisations to have websites. Now it's not. So it's just a matter of when you make the leap, really.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to turn to some of the questions from the audience here. Does anyone want to share what role citizens have played in building up their digital twin? And how their presence has been able to support sort of data, you know, gathering, ingestion, or what have you? What's the role of the citizen in this agenda?
So we can take a stab at that. So one of the challenges we have now is we've outstripped our open data and data sharing capabilities. So we're having to invest in that piece. But along the way, we have used our VR experiences with about 9,000 to 10,000 Wellingtonians to help make resilience decisions. In doing that, we've worked out how you create consultation workflows in VR. It's a deeply individual technology. It's actually quite hard to use in a communal setting. The other one is through some of the data literacy stuff. So we have Mittens, the city cat. It's our civic pet. Citizens have, they contribute photographs. They've made a map of Mittens. That all gets expressed in there as well.
Joanna, I'm going to ask you that one as well. With all the other stuff that's happening in Western Sydney, so much engagement and community planning, and you know, we've got a question that's come here through from Elizabeth. How do we, you know, get people to use these kind of digital models? Can you share any of the engagement work that you've been doing in Western Sydney, and how digital twin may come into the conversation?
Look, I think that conversation is early in the piece. Certainly spatial services have been doing a lot of that work and through their partnerships. For me personally, I've been trying to make sure I introduce it and make sure our local schools are aware and know how to access it. But the next piece for us to focus on is really to help our community visualize our planning changes and the development that's going on.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Got a question here from Daniel. Can the team discuss experiences with risk assessment, procurement restriction, change management limitations? Anyone got any views on that? Procurement, risk, change management, all the good, easy stuff.
I think the change management, you've got to find the relevant context, and that covers off some of your risk as well. So in the instance where our particular council is building a new precinct, and so now is the time where we're having the conversations about BIM and BIM for asset management and digital engineering. If we tried to have that previously, it just wouldn't have had the context or relevance to the frontline work that we do.
Yeah. Okay. Let me go to another one here. Okay, private sector. Let's talk about private sector. Okay, we're all in this together. Government can't do it on its own, and the private sector is sort of biting at the chomp here to get involved. Can I have the panel share with me some views around the role of the private sector as innovators, as potential partners? What's your experience been? How do, particularly for Joanna, Mel and Sean, how do you as a client get the best out of a private sector partner in the area of twins based on your experience? Who wants to have a go first?
Adam, I'm happy to have a go. I mean, the private sector is pivotal to all this. We can't do it on our own. We've had several private sector partners contribute critical data sets to our digital twin project, and we partner extensively with industry in a whole range of different ways. But you know, growing the skill sets of the future are really, really important. The innovation and capability we see, you know, in Australia is incredibly great. I think the challenge is just really making sure that, you know, matching the right capabilities with the right opportunities, getting funding for great ideas, they're really, really important. But increasingly, it's, you know, one of the challenges is, you know, increasingly I can see benefits in partnership with the private sector, and sometimes that rubs up against some of the more sort of binary relationship around procurement, which is, you know, very much at arm's length. So an example of that was, you know, sometimes, like we had, when we procured our 2-centimetre image mesh for Fisherman's Bend, we'd never procured something like that. So we were a bit sort of, it took us a bit of a couple of goes to actually even express our requirements the right way. So, you know, and so I think by the time we got our partner on board, we had to have a fair bit of sort of mutual understanding that we had to work together and iterate to get that right. And that's an example of that, how that sort of collaboration can get you the outcomes, even if it's not sort of all fully sort of tied up and detailed at the outset. And of course, the other thing with anything that's experimental and new is you need a bit of flexibility, and you know, developing things with an agile methodology is very well suited to things like this. And sometimes our procurement processes don't work that way. They want, you know, time, cost and scope all bundled up in a nice little preordained bundle. So we're trying to work and get our procurement frameworks to adjust to that new way of thinking, and we're having some early success, which is very encouraging.
Excellent, excellent. Other views on that?
Let me just make a comment which sort of goes back to the earlier question. Look, I'd agree with everything Melissa just said. The comment I would have made on procurement is that we're in a fast-moving space, and government doesn't necessarily understand what it needs to procure, doesn't have the capability in house to spec it and understand how to deliver it under that typical procuring sort of framework that they've been landed with. And so finding innovative ways to partner with industry to just run pilots or just discover ways in which to better write a procurement document, understand what they want, then evaluate that and then manage that procurement going forward is a really critical part, I think, and understanding how to bring people into a partnering arrangement to discover all of that and go through that process. So when they go for building benefit in cases and spending large chunks of money, it's actually well formed from the outset and well understood. And further to that, this journey that government's going on also allows them to understand what sort of skill sets they need in-house versus outside as they build, go on the digital twin journey themselves. So understanding what they need to bring in and the evolving needs of managing these procurements. So I think all governments across Australia and New Zealand are trying to find ways in which they can innovatively partner to better understand how to put together a large procurement.
Yeah, okay. Can I come back to the panel on this and be a little bit more pointed? And I want to be provocative as well, again, through the lens of local government. From a procurement perspective, I don't even know how we go there because we don't have any standards, right? Well, what actually is a digital twin? You know, I'm flicking up the ISO index now of international standards. There's nothing here around digital twins for cities. So how do we even begin to sort of do that and try and evolve when there's no standards for this? Sure, I've read a blog that NASA was doing it 50 years ago and GE was doing it here, and defense and aerospace and mining and resources have been doing twins forever, but you're a local authority. You know, you gather taxpayers' money, you deliver core services, you know, public place, urban design, you know, waste collection. How do you begin to procure anything around a twin? There's no standards. It's not clearly defined. How are we going to do this?
Well,
that's the end of my provocative question.
We do all sorts of things that are very poorly defined. It's just the nature of public service. And that's one of the difficulties in the whole area. We don't necessarily know what our role is. We're still exploring it. And I can tell you one of the hardest things I have to deal with is when a vendor comes in and tells me how to do my job for half an hour and then tells me they want to partner. It's not the right foot to start off at, though I do value their opinions. And so when it comes to standards are a really interesting thing from a local government point of view, because they enable aggregation, so higher levels of government can take figures. They can also allow market frameworks to exist, so companies can exist across multiple cities. There is actually very little incentive for cities themselves to implement standards in terms of our daily line of business, given how expensive that process can be, given the size of our legacy data sets and how they relate to our processes. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it, and to me, standards are a little bit like currency. I don't know how currency is made beyond an intellectual level, but so long as it spends well, secure, and is going to end up in my pocket, I'm really happy to use it, and I think it's necessary for a civilized society.
Okay. Thank you, Sean. Did anyone else want to respond or react to my provocation there around lack of standards? So we really don't know what it is or what we want?
I would say where we're, as Sean mentioned, trying to figure out what your right role is the space that we're in. And so we've benefited from the fact that with the city deal, we did the industry engagement and we were able to, through the Pitch Fest, do some trials. It's not strictly digital twin, but it gave us it was really the first time for many of our councils to even have a way to access that type of procurement or accessing or developing that type of partnership. It gave a framework and it gave some safe parameters. So we're in the middle of that. We're in the middle of trying to figure that out. And where I see what we need is where we don't have the skill set to get the insights out of the digital twin. Right, that would be the place where we're going to need to bring in services, and it's probably the market's going to work better to provide those than for council to try to develop them. But we're in the middle of it.
Yeah, Joanna, that's a good point you raised there around extracting the insights out of the twin, right? Because that's kind of what it's all about, right? To generate insights so we can make better decisions. It's quite interesting. Over the past 12 months, I've been sort of nerding out a little bit on command and control centers and operation centers, you know, those ideas of walking into the room, big single pane of glass, you can sort of see everything that's sort of happening. And, you know, each of our states have ones for emergency season, you know, bushfires and ambulance, and it's all up on a screen. And, you know, we have in a lot of places had those for transportation for a long time. You know, the road network or the rail network is up. I mean, New South Wales, I've seen their room. It's all on one screen. To get full value out of the twin, to extract those insights, to understand those insights, to see those insights, and then for humans to then do something with it, how much do we need to be able to sort of see this? You know, I'm trying to work out what level 3 looks like in the council office building where all the twin stuff is done. Maybe that's an oversimplification, it's scattered all over the place, but what do we see? What do we need to see as the twin? Give me a sense of that, because last November I walked into the to a big command and control center in France, and I was blown away. It was all there in real time, multiple teams. You just sort of turn to someone, you make a decision in real time because that thing went red. And everyone can see it. The sort of augmented bits of infrastructure like that go to help us realizing the twin or benefiting from it a lot more? Or I'm overcomplicating it. I'm buying the premium pack when I only need the sort of the mid-range level pack. I mean, Sean, I was there with your goggles. I got to walk around Wellington, you know, and yep. We were able to peel off the ground layer to see where the legacy streams are, and therefore, you know, where sort of the subsidence might be. I mean, visually, I was engaged. I had insights in my eyeballs.
So you need to be able to visualize it, in my view. So one of the reasons we built the visualization was because people don't really want to talk to us about standards and business rules and data investment. But when we put the CEO in it and he could see that the tree outside his house was wrong, that's what ultimately helped us get the business case to digitize trees over the line. So humans need an artifact, even if it is a digital one. Whether it gets delivered to a command and control center, I'm not so sure about. You know, we've got command and control centers for things like traffic and emergency management, that sort of thing. But as for an overall one for a city, I'm not sure how that meshes with a democracy.
Okay. Any other views on sort of the heads-up display of the twin? Having the teams in front of the screen, viewing it, understanding what's going on?
I would look, I'd endorse Sean's comments. I think it's always good to have the command and control centre. That's either needed to do that command and control function, like say a bushfire emergency management piece. But if you want to scale that to community engagement, you need to take that concept further than just one room, and so you won't get. It doesn't serve that purpose. So you need to bring it to the browser. And look, I agree with Sean, you need to be able to touch and feel things. So that's the way to communicate it. So I think there's a place for both. I think there's a place for that command and control function within government to do things like you said, traffic monitoring, but you need to extend that visualization capability through a browser or through one of these things to the public, so that you can extend the value and the benefits.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to ask a question around departments and services functionalities, your fellow peers within the local government organisation. How do we go about making the twin for everyone? Okay, so Adrian, for example, has got a great question here about, what does this mean for urban design and the urban design team, or the social services team? I would not be surprised that many think this is a buildings BIM kind of, real sort of niche area, and therefore, I'm the head of, social services at the council. This really doesn't apply to me. Is that a risk, or am I being too sensitive there?
Well, we started with community services and the social bit of council, and then moved into the planning and more traditional areas. So I can tell you that when it comes to dealing with district health boards and police forces and things, a digital twin is quite transformational in how you do that. At the moment, I've got about 4 different departments all wanting to join the twin program. One of the really interesting things is some of them, like urban design, it's going to be clear, but an intellectual challenge for us. They're presented with more and more evidence and how that fits into their existing processes and ideas about how the city works. For others, like public health, it's their components in the digital twin are actually primarily non-visual. They've got to do with the processing of applications and licenses and compliance and health and safety, that kind of thing. So if you take the diversity across a local government, you can't do everything for everyone all at once. Mm-hmm. It's a case of pick something, do it, and then do something else.
Yeah, okay. Joanna or Mel, have you found this on Fisherman's Bend? Was it just the buildings people that got engaged? What about the landscape architects or other kind of disciplines?
I think Fisherman's Bend is very much a planning use case, but I would say that there has been no shortage of interest in terms of how we take it to the next level with a more diverse use case. So one of the ones that's particularly interesting is looking at emergency response and public health response. And there's been quite a bit of interest in, sort of thinking through how you can get synthetic populations into a digital twin and monitor pedestrian and people movement and behaviour in a precinct. So I think that's definitely interesting. But look, yes, it is very, it seems at the moment to be very much focused on the built environment. But if you think about local government and service provision, so much of what local governments do is around service provision by place, and a lot of that's hit and miss and guesswork at the moment. You can really see a future in the not with digital twins where you've got far better real-time access into what people need, where they're living, what they're using, and how you can optimise your asset base to provide for the needs of your community. So I can definitely see that. And I think in terms of the access and public versus private sort of realm, I think about that in terms of just current day. There's a spectrum of access to these sorts of tools. There's a highly private, stakeholder-only view, and then there's potentially going to be a level of public interaction where the community will get far greater, you know, sort of insights from a community engagement process than they would with existing methods, trying to figure out what a building means for their neighbourhood when they're looking at it as 2D paper, for example. So yeah, the AR/VR side of things is really important. It's just how you get that from, you take that from being something that's interesting and novel to just something that's normal. And I think, and getting over the interface challenges of that, which I think is going to be, yeah, one to watch over the next little while.
Yeah, okay. In terms of the next little while and the future and moving forward, let's pivot. We got a few more minutes left. Daniel's got a really great question up here, which I like. What current processes do we think will be completely deleted in 10, 20 years time as we sort of mature in digital twin and we embrace sort of the value and power and functionality of it? What gets deleted out of the processes that we experience today?
I'll just pick up on the rules as code thread. I mean, I'm not sure that, I can't guarantee that many of the process steps will change, but I hope the amount of labour and time that goes into supporting them or applying them looks significantly different. I mean, it would be great to get to a point where some of our really important regulatory processes were, you know, sort of machine ready, that they were able to be interacted with from a machine learning perspective to develop algorithms that really do take some of the pain out of the decision-making process and really focus on the quality outcomes and monitoring success and impact. So I think that's really an exciting sort of aspect of this technological revolution, is moving it away from servicing the process to freeing you up to focusing on the effectiveness of the outcomes and interventions. So I think that's one of the big hopes.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else got any views on what gets deleted in 10 to 20 years time as a result of the twin?
Freedom of information requests. In theory, we should be able to make everything much more transparent, particularly in the transactional parts of government. The other one is, you know, we used to have someone who drove around checking the streetlights were on. Now they self-report. In theory, that should be possible across most utility networks, which should allow us to concentrate on bigger breaks and bigger problems.
Yeah, yeah.
I would say around the underground utilities, if we can get our quality of capture up, being able to visualize what's under the ground rather than trying to physically locate every time you go to dig something, could be pretty powerful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Graeme, what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's certainly hard to sort of say what's going to get removed. I think the, you know, automated processes, improve community engagement. I'd say we'd spend time on higher value activities. So I think we'll just get more efficiencies in some of our existing processes. You can see that. Beyond that, I find it really hard to forecast. So I'd say we'll be spending our time on higher value activities, and a great example, less time trying to find where the underground pipe is, or trying to capture all of that, and more time just maintaining it. So yeah, that'd be my comment.
Yeah, okay. I'd imagine, and sort of similar to the green building movement that I've been around for a little while, you know, insurance premiums go down, investment starts to sort of move to sort of the more efficient option compared to the non-efficient option. I can imagine there's a whole range of flow-on effects, financing, and so on and so forth. So let's turn to our sort of final reflections here, and building a little bit on sort of that last question about the future. Now, in the green building movement, one of the most successful movements in our modern time, it seemed to work in decades. Okay, so the first decade was trying to understand what a green building was. let's put it on paper. It's called Green Star. It's got 10 categories here, 105 things of this, very black and white, very easy with some scales, points. That's a good one. That's not a good one. That's a better one. That's a, an okay one. It took it was all voluntary, okay? No one had to do it. A couple of leaders went out there, did a couple, played around with it, pilot scale. It was hard, it was risky, it was costly. And sort of fast forward through the next decade, and it would be negligent not to build a green building in a CBD in any city in the world, right? That's where we've gone. That took 20 years. Okay, that was a 20-year journey. We had to build a good policy environment. We had to have good supply. We had to train everyone up. But it was all sort of underpinned by the very clear sort of definition and standards, so to speak. So that's 20 years. 20 years is a long time. It's also a short time. We're in the sort of, some describe as the defining decade now, 3,000 plus days until it's 2030, Paris climate agreements, Millennium Development Goals. How do we, this has been a great conversation, component parts and piloting. I fell into digital twin. We've still got no standards. I'm trying to think of the glass half full kind of summary here. And this is why we wanted to have a conversation around cities, 530 plus local authorities in Australia, 70 plus in New Zealand. Can we get a sort of a short summary from each of you as our panelists as to, what your thoughts are in terms of supercharging this agenda so that we can sort of achieve all these great outcomes that we want to achieve from data and activating data? What are kind of your, you've sort of got 4.5 minutes with the minister. You sit down in front of the minister and sort of, what are the key themes of your sort of optimistic pitch to the minister in terms of how we supercharge this? Who wants to go first? Very short, don't need to say much. Key themes.
Adam, look, I'm incredibly optimistic about where things are at. I mean, I just can't believe how far some of the, important Victorian stakeholders have come in just 12 months. So I can only imagine where we'll get to moving forward. But look, collaboration is absolutely an essential ingredient. More talking, more working together, working across boundaries is going to be essential to getting us there. And really, the ultimate pitch to, decision makers is around enhanced capability to achieve livable, sustainable outcomes in our community, and to do it better, cheaper, and faster, hopefully.
Yep. Okay. Great. Joanna, what have you got for us? What are your key themes?
Look, I think all of this is around information management, and if we really want to accelerate it, we've got to decide what just needs to be captured and maintained as that information changes. So when we build something, what do we put in the twin and how do we maintain it? I think that's a key to accelerating this tool.
Okay. Graeme?
I think the journey's decadal, there's no doubt about that. It's for me, the key theme is really strong purpose-built use cases which advance the different possibilities that I'll say the plethora of sensors we've got before us are going to enable. So how do we fuse data sets to open up possibilities that we don't imagine right now, and how can we take those learnings and improve digital twin use cases? I think that's for me.
Thanks, Graeme. And finally, Sean, what have you got to say on this matter?
I think the key is turning it into an architecture of collaboration. There are lots of authorities that make up a city, not just its local government. And if we can underpin those relationships, we can begin to transform them. And if you look forward with challenges like climate change, our past performance is not the indicator of future success that it once was. So we're going to have to somehow figure out a future that's quite different from our experience of the past. Thank you.
Thank you for those final insights. Panel, thank you so much for that. It's been certainly refreshing to see that our conversation around digital twin has very much been outcomes focused. You know, we've spoken a lot about people, you know, piloting, building up collaboration, cutting across boundaries, being agnostic to, you know, technology. And we didn't really talk about technology a lot, which was in some way refreshing, because we know that technology is awesome. It's there, it'll always change, it'll always get better, and it's of course the super enabler to better cities and outcomes for our citizens. So thank you so much, Joanna, Graeme, Mel, Sean, for joining us on behalf of Aviva, who are sponsoring our session, and also the Smart Cities Council. It's been a delight to have you take part in this conversation around digital twins and cities. Just quickly, some final notes for our watchers and our listeners. Our data dialogues continue for the next 2 months until October. September, we're talking about data sharing, and in October we're going to go there, which is 5G and what the new data world might look like. Also, some key resources there for those that want some more guidance and support around digital twins. We've got the Digital Twin Hub, which is also where you can find information out around Digital Twin Week later this year. The Centre for Data Leadership has some good resources. And with that, I'm going to draw the session to a close. Thank you again to our sponsors, Aviva. This has been another monthly data dialogue around digital twins for cities as part of Smart Cities Week. Thanks again to our panelists, and look forward to bringing you another session soon. Everyone stay safe, healthy, and optimistic. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.